Well, if you needed any more confirmation that the mainstream media is corrupt, we just got our clearest indication yet. CNN is now admitting that they have to get approval from Israel before they run any news pieces about the war in Gaza. Can you imagine that? So CNN, which purports to be an independent news organization, right, the most trusted name in news, has to run things up the flagpole in order to before broadcast. So a CNN whistleblower has come forward admitting to The Intercept that CNN has a long-time relationship with the Censor Bureau in Jerusalem. So let's just go through this piece. And you can see here, CNN runs Gaza coverage past Jerusalem team operating under shadow of an IDF censor, the Israeli Defense Forces censor. So every single Palestinian-related line for reporting must seek approval from the Jerusalem Bureau, according to the whistleblower. Or what the Bureau, when the Bureau is not staffed, like if they're on vacation, then they have to take it to a few hand-picked by the Bureau and senior management, from which lines are most often edited out with a very specific nuance, the staffer says. So they basically go through and then chop out anything that's not pro-Israel and is, maybe they chop out whatever sort of is pro-Palestinian. So let's go through this. The censor restricts foreign news outlets from reporting on certain subjects of its choosing and outright censors articles or news segments that don't meet their guidelines, according to The Intercept. Other news,
what the heck? What is Israel Pfizer now?
Right.
Bigger than that.
Much bigger.
Yeah, a little bit.
Bigger than that. They run it all, right? I mean, the policy of running stories about Israel or Palestinians past the Jerusalem Bureau has been in place for years, according to this CNN spokesperson. It is simply down to the fact that there are many unique and complex local nuances that warrant extra scrutiny to make sure our reporting is as precise and accurate as possible. The spokesperson added that CNN does not share news copy with the censor and called the network's interactions with the IDF minimal. This is what a spokesperson said for CNN. So CNN is sort of doing some backpedaling here and is now, trying to put out the fire, so to speak.
I have a bit of a novel idea. Why doesn't CNN send some journalists over there to actually see what's going on? And then they could cross-reference it with what they're being told by Israel and what they're seeing in Gaza.
It would be amazing, actually, if CNN sent journalists, into Gaza, where many of these journalists have been killed. Of course, so many journalists are being killed. One very brave journalist over the past 24 hours has now said, I can't do it anymore. That I'm going to take my family out of here and protect, because so many of these journalists and their families are being shot and killed. And this journalist said, this journalist is in his 30s, and he said, the reason he's leaving, he said, is because I've been sharing this information with the world, and the world is ignoring it, and they're not doing anything. And so I can continue to show you the horrors of what's happening every day here, but no one's doing anything about it. So do I lose my family then?
Right.
So now my son will be killed because I'm continuing to show you what's happening here every day, and no one's doing a goddamn thing about it.
Well, we saw how Shireen Abu Akleh was targeted by the IDF, and so it's extremely dangerous. For anyone, though, who's ever been to journalism school, you know that you're taught, like, journalism 101 is you do not show your story to your sources. You never have to do that. Sometimes you do it if it's like a story about, I don't know, like a fluff piece or whatever, but you don't have to. You do not have to run your story by your sources.
By your sources?
Yeah. If it's so...
Oh, yeah.
You interview someone, like, as a part of a piece about Israel, and then they say, can I read your piece before it goes to press? You don't do that. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might do it if you think it's inconsequential, just to make sure you've got the quote right, or the price on something or whatever, but you really are not supposed to ever do it.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah. In practice, the staff member told The Intercept, the CNN whistleblower told The Intercept, war crime and genocide are taboo words. We're not allowed to write them. Israeli bombings in Gaza will be reported as blasts, attributed to nobody, until the Israeli military weighs in to either accept or deny responsibility. They're labeled as blasts. Quotes and information provided by Israeli army and government officials tend to be approved quickly, while those from Palestinians tend to be heavily scrutinized by the Jerusalem Bureau. Imagine that. Jerusalem Bureau Chief Richard Green announced that it had expanded its review team to include editors outside of Israel now. Oh, okay, so now they've got some extra people outside of Israel, calling the new policy the Jerusalem Second Eyes program. I love it. The expanded review process was ostensibly put in place to bring more expert eyes to CNN's reporting, particularly when the Jerusalem news desk is not staffed. So when the Jerusalem news desk can't approve your copy and your videos that are going to be broadcast on CNN, then they've got some backup people that they've figured out who they are, and they've handpicked these individuals.
One of the things that Ilan Pappé talks about in his books on Israel, and he's an Israeli Jew, and he talks about how it has long since been known that you cannot really criticize Israel and their narrative of the Zionist government. And so a lot of times the way that people do it is through poetry. That's why Palestinians have so much poetry, is because that seems to be the thing that they are able to get away with without being censored by the Israeli government. And another thing that they usually use is theater. But they have historically known that work in Israel is censored, and especially the press. This is true. This has been true for decades.
So then maybe CNN will start doing poetry readings. And that's
if
how
they
get,
want to.
If they actually wanted to get the truth out.
Right.
They'll start doing poetry. You'll see commercial breaks now. They'll do like a news piece, and then they'll do like, you know how like CNN does like the little garbage, like a moment of Zen or something like that. They'll do a moment of poetry, and it'll just be like you'll have to sit there and read poetry to figure out what's actually going on.
We're actually trying to get. I mean, wouldn't
Morse
this be
code
awful?
or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and this isn't like, because like we know that there are already state-sponsored media, but what is this? Like a foreign government can just come in and say, hey, you know what? We don't like your coverage, and they just bow down. Like that's horrible.
Beyond horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, we know that these massive corporations, these multi-billion-dollar corporations, they don't have their viewers' interests at heart. They have an agenda, of course. They absolutely have an agenda, right? Which is to make money. They have an agenda to make money and spread propaganda. And many times they have cushy relationships, of course, with the intelligence state because they're spreading propaganda. And the intelligence community makes it very cushy for them to do that. Props them up and pays them. Newsroom employees were advised Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If you look at like how our intelligence agencies and the Israeli intelligence agencies and like their government and our government are so intertwined, I don't even know that you could consider it foreign intervention, because it's like it's domestic. We like our own politicians are in bed with them, so it's just like they're doing it on their own accord. It's not even really foreign influence. Yeah, I mean, it's heavily bought and paid for in Washington D.C. So yeah, I don't know how much. It's not really foreign at all. It's just they collude on a regular basis. Newsroom employees were advised to, quote, remind our audiences of the immediate cause of this current conflict, CNN says, namely the Hamas attack and mass murder and kidnap of Israeli civilians on October 7th. So basically, anytime they do a story, they have to remind their viewers of October 7th. At least 22,000 people have been confirmed killed in Gaza, 57,000 wounded, and thousands more, of course, are dead. But very little actual Western media organizations are there actually covering this on the ground and providing the actual truth. And now we know that CNN is now funneling this information through a Jerusalem bureau, according to The Intercept, in order to get this reporting out, and it's heavily censored. Are you guys surprised by this at all? But it's really amazing to hear from these guys.
Well, and to me, it just shows that they're losing the narrative. If they're having to go to this measure to do this, they're losing the narrative. Because if you look at the narrative over on X, it's completely different than anything you'll see on CNN or anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why there's such a reliance. I mean, independent media now is so important and so valuable. This is, again, the trust in the media. We did the piece on the trust in the media a few weeks ago, and just how it's absolutely collapsed.
Yeah. It's garbage. And now we know, we already know that they lack curiosity about all kinds of things, such as vaccines, illnesses, medical community, right? All of it. And so now we know why they lack so much interest in discussions of peace. And we've brought you research before that showed that even during the Iraq War, the first Gulf Wars, CNN and other mainstream news channels only used about 10% of their pundits were pro-peace. There's a reason for that. It's not that hard. It's not because they can't book them. They don't want to.
Yeah, they absolutely don't. They have a narrative and an agenda they want. So there you go. Not surprising at all. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.